You need help. Your board game collection is bloated and ugly, and I heard it's struggling to perform on game night. There's only some shame in it, and I'm here to lend an ear and a shoulder and to sort this mess out. My patrons have sent me photos of their collections, uncensored, and they've sent me their concerns. And like any good therapist, I will tell them exactly what they're doing wrong and how to fix it in a supportive way. Except for one guy whose collection I will mercilessly roast because he asked me to. If you want me to answer your collection concerns, then become a patron of the channel. I would love to soothe your shelves and caress your kallax until all your pain is gone. Now, let's stop being creepy and get to the first collection. This video is sponsored by Huel, and I'm gonna make myself a meal right now. You can get 15% off Huel by using the link in the description below, or by scanning this QR code and using my code ActualLol15. More on that later. This collection's from Velin in Bulgaria. Clearly he's a fan of racing games. You've got Steampunk Rally, Heat, Joyride Duel. That's making up almost a quarter of the collection is just racing games. The collection of this size, you want it to be flexible. You want games that you can bring to the table with different size groups, whether people are new to it or not. As you can tell, I'm into racing games, Heat being my favorite. Yeah, we can tell. And my biggest issue is I'm not really able to get half the games to the table. Every week there's an open gathering at a specific board game bar in my city. That's exclusively where I play. So if I want to play my own games, I have to pick a subset of them that I can fit into my backpack. And I'm pretty limited in what games would even be considered by the others. Root is just out because pretty much anything with rules longer than 15 minutes to explain is a no-go. And so this is something I think a lot of people butt up with, is that you've got the games that you're dreaming of playing, the ones you hear about that you buy immediately because they sound perfect for you. But then you've got the reality of who you're going to play with, whether it's friends that aren't as into board games as you, or a partner, or in this case, a group of people that just don't want to learn rules longer than 15 minutes. So you've bought these big complicated games and you don't get to play them, which is more frustrating than just not even owning them in the first place. And I've had this exact experience lately because I've been going to a new game night, taking games, and people are just blanking them. This excitement that I had for what I was taking just is gone. And it can, kind of ruin the game night for you. So I think it's about trying to play to the situation, finding games that you like that these people would play, so that there's some kind of common ground. Because if you end up just playing a bunch of games you don't like either, that's not particularly fun. But maybe you can find something that's a bit more in the middle. I think sometimes you've got to let go. Like Sleeping Gods is like an epic kind of narrative-driven thing, and that's not something that really exists in a compact format that you can teach in 15 minutes. So I think it's more about forgetting those things, setting them aside, possibly selling them, because it's unlikely you're going to get that experience that you want right now, and investing in games that you can play. And then maybe as you start to get to know people at this game night, you start to meet the people that align with you. You have these conversations. You mention, I've got Root at home. Someone actually perks up to that. And that's where you start to, organize games outside of the game night. He goes on to say, I usually bring Joyride, Steampunk Rally Fusion, Scout, Sea Salt and Paper, Cartographers, Dale of Merchants, and Hive, with Joyride being by far the most played. The only issue is it only plays up to 4, and we often have 5 or 6 people wanting to play. So again, this is a really common thing with game nights where you go along and there just happens to be more people than the games that you've got, which is also quite frustrating. So it definitely is good to be armed with games that are flexible and versatile. I've got a video called Games That to Start Your Collection that really focuses on games that cross like multiple player counts, that if you were only to own like 10 games, that this would give you like a real breadth of player counts. But it can be really hard to find games that feel like a board game, if that makes sense. They're not just like a light card game or a party game, but that they play 5 or 6 players and well, because there's plenty of games out there that promise to, and you just shouldn't touch them with a barge pole. And so some that stand out for me would be Libertalia Winds of Galecrest is even better with more players. Cult Express, it adds to the chaos. It's a bit of a mean game, so your group's kind of got to be into that. Zoovardist, if you want some light negotiation, that goes up to 7 players. And then recently Hot Streak, which is sort of a race, but it's more of a betting game where you're watching a race and you're betting on who wins. All of those games are on the kind of lighter side of board games. They don't feel necessarily like strategy games, but they give you that bigger experience that you might be looking for. But you're also saying that these things have to fit in a bag, and this is where games can really let you down, because Libertalia, Cult Express, these are big boxes. And then he says, Scout is quite often the starter game while we wait for more people to gather. I enjoy it at 3 players, but try to avoid playing it 4 or 5, as it tends to drag in my opinion. Yeah, totally agree. I feel like Scout looks like more of a filler game than it is. And so for the start of the night, it can take a while, especially with more players. So I think if you're looking for like a small box card game to bring out as people are arriving, there are some games that are just much better for that situation. So I would go with Llama, Flip 7, Trio, Jungo, and No Thanks are all like perfect for that situation. All of them slightly different, but all just brilliant filler games, nice small boxes. You can just throw it in. They have a bit of flexibility in terms of player count, and they're quick. You could play like 10 or 20 minutes, and then someone new has turned up, and you could play another round with them. Anyway, if you have any advice on what other games might be played at a relatively casual gathering like ours, I would appreciate it. A couple of games that stand out for me are Seven Wonders Architects, because it can play from like 3 to 7 players, and it just doesn't really have too much downtime for a big group. I'm also thinking Captain Flip would be good, just very easy to get into. But if you want something that's a bit smaller box that you can fit into your backpack, then check out my shoebox video. But definitely the game's Nar packs quite a kind of big experience into a small box. And then Through the Desert, the new version that comes in a box like this size, is just a proper strategy game that you get in a smaller box. You're getting something that used to be in like a Ticket to Ride size box into something that you could fit like 4 of them in a backpack, but you only need 1 copy. That is definitely a top tip, but it's on the kind of crunchier side of things, so probably like build up to that. I don't think it's complicated in rules, but it just might seem a bit more intense. This collection is from Jade in the Netherlands, and it's a really nice sized collection. It's got some great games in it, but it's got one glaring problem, and as she says, my problem with my collection is that my husband takes up 2 shelves of the board game cabinet with his study books and important documents. If I could just have those 2 shelves, then I could buy some new games and they would fit in the cabinet. Please advise. I'm not getting rid of my husband. He's amazing, and who else would be available every day to play games with? Okay, so we can't get rid of the husband. We're gonna have to come up with a peaceful solution. But first, let's just look at his books, because here you've got a French to Dutch dictionary and a Dutch to French dictionary. Does he really need to translate both ways? Like, if he's reading something in French, he just needs to know what it is in Dutch. So you can get rid of one of those books. But if you look closer, he's actually got 2 sets of Dutch to French and French to Dutch dictionaries. Why do you need both? That's 2 books you can get rid of right now, and there's a book about cocktails. That's not an important study book. Let's get rid of that. And if you all of those, I think you can fit an extra board game in there. It's not going to be like a Ticket to Ride, but I think you could get some card games in there. But if we're being tough on your husband for the efficiency of his book collection, we need to start asking you questions about your game collection, because you've got 4 different boxes of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, and you can only be playing through 1 at a time. And once you're done with it, you can move it on, get rid of it, and work on to the next one. But you've bought them all potentially at once, and now you've got so much to get through before you're going to free up that space. Anyone watching, I wouldn't recommend the red box of Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. It focuses on the Jack the Ripper cases, so it's way more dark and disturbing. It just doesn't have the same feel as the other cases that you might be used to. I didn't enjoy it nearly as much, so I would leave that one to the last, probably skip it entirely. So top tip for anyone, just buy 1 of these crime games, finish it, then move on to the next one. Because you've also got like 5 boxes of Chronicles of Crime, and then there's the expansions down the bottom. So there's a lot of content to get through, but it's taking up a lot of space on your shelf that could have different games in it. And realistically, you're only ever in the mood for like 1 or 2 crime games a week. you want to then have some variety with some other stuff. So it's taking up so much space on your shelf, but it's only offering you one type of experience. And I think there's some room for culling here. You've got a lot of little card games, probably 50 or more, and I'm sure that not all of them are as good as each other. So you don't even have to go back and play them. Just think, when was the last time I played this? And when I played it, how good was that experience? Is it memorable enough that I need to get it to the table again? Does it actually compare to the experiences I've been having lately with the card games that I've really been enjoying? Or are you just keeping it around because it's small and it doesn't take up much space? Because if you got rid of like 5 or 10 of those, then that would free up space for a whole big game. But if none of that works, just wait till your husband's next birthday and buy him a custom handmade little bookcase for his study books. Get them out of your shelves, and then you've got loads of space. This collection comes from Jack in New York City, and it's a really nice size. He says there's 49 games here, a real nice mix of styles, clearly some actual old influence, which I'm appreciating. But his issue is that he goes to board game nights he has to get the subway to. Heat, Fromage, Libertalia, Survive the Island, and Sagrada have been popular among my friends. However, it's extremely difficult to bring more than 2 of these to a game night due to their size, and I'm running out of space on my board game shelf. And I keep falling into the trap of getting 2-player games, but most of my board game nights are in a larger group, 5 to 8 people. I need some games with higher player counts. Well, clearly there's almost no space left on these shelves, so first, let's take some off the shelves and then see what we can fit in afterwards. The top shelf's a great selection of small box games. I would get rid of Exploding Kittens and the one above it, which doesn't even have a name on it. Then I'd get rid of Throw Throw Burrito. It's too light and fluffy of a game for the amount of space it's taking up on your shelves. When you've got a collection this small, the size of the box is so important, but also how much length, how much replayability are you getting out of that? Is it gonna come out once every 3 months, or could you feasibly be interested in playing it once every couple of weeks? Those are the games you want to keep. Flatiron stands out to me because that's a newer 2-player game, a bit heavier than the other 2-player games you've got here. It sounds like you don't play 2-player games that much, so I would definitely lose 1 or 2 of them. And that one's a bit harder to get back into than some of the others, so I would personally take that one out. On the next shelf, I would get rid of Boop, another 2-player game that you possibly don't need. And Raiders of the North Sea doesn't seem to fit with the style of games in your collection and the ones you're saying your friends are liking, so that could be a good one to get rid of. On the bottom shelf, as much as I like Daybreak, it feels more intense and harder to get to the table than the other games in your collection, like it doesn't fit your style. And in a collection that was 100 games big, I feel like there's a place for Daybreak, but these have really got to earn their space. They've got to be games that you're playing regularly, or you could imagine that. And it feels like for me that this one would sit on the shelf longer than the others. I'd also personally get rid of Wingspan because it doesn't seem to align with what you're saying your group's into. And then Jack's given me a long list of games that he's interested in, and he wants to know which ones are best suited for his collection. So first we've got Colt Express, Ra, Blue Lagoon, Waterfall Park, Quacks, and Melee Fury. All of these, I think, offer something different that he doesn't already have in his collection. And some of them go to higher player counts. You've got Colt Express at 6, Waterfall Park at 5, and Ra. But they're all still in big boxes. So I think they're good picks, but they're no easier to get around on the subway. Games I wouldn't go for are Calico, because you've already got Sagrada and Cascadia, Finspan, because you've already got Wingspan, High Society, you've already got QE, Viticulture is a big box, and it's more involved than the other games that you've got in your collection at the moment. He mentions Arc Nova, SETI, and Scythe. I mean, you've got to decide, are you trying to push heavier than what you're already playing? In which case, definitely try those games. But if you want to kind of stay where you are, then I wouldn't recommend them. Then on the lighter side, he's got No Mercy, Seaside, On Tour, and The Gang. I don't think any of them are worthy of a collection that only has 50 games. But I would say that Las Vegas, Herd Mentality, and Flip 7 could offer something. If you are looking for a lighter game, then they could be nice ones to add. And then he's got 5 2-player games: Caesar, Solstice, Marabunta, Match of the Century, and Agent Avenue. And I think if you're just not playing 2-player games, you've got to be honest with yourself and not bring any more in. But if you were getting back into them, I would say Caesar is probably the best. And if you just want to cram one into a small space, then get Marabunta. So just by culling a few games, you could really mix up your options by bringing in Colt Express, Waterfall Park, Ra, Las Vegas, and Flip 7, offering you something different to what you already have and giving you games that seem to fit the kind of games you're playing at the moment. This collection is from Ryan, and wow, I love a collection that fits into the room, that looks nice. You've basically got the same color of wall as I have, and there's just something about like the black Kallax against the dark blue background that I really like. I kind of wish that I had black bookcases as well, because it just kind of fades away and then lets the games pop. It just looks great. But if you dig into the games, the thing that I noticed the most is how many new games Ryan's got. Like, this is someone that has been to Gen Con and just bought like 50 games. Like Fairy, Rainbow, Panda Panda, Prey, all of the all-play games, High Tide, that was Gen Con, the places for my books. There's just almost no old games on these shelves. One of my tips just straight off is like, if you're new to the hobby, don't just be buying the new stuff that they're pitching to you at Gen Con, because that is not the best games. They're just the ones that they are trying to sell right now. There are so many great games from the last 20 years, and if you just dig a little deeper, they're the ones that might stick around in your collection. Of course, like 5 to 10% of the games released this year will also have longevity, but 90% of them are just going to get ditched. Ryan says, I'm in a constant battle for space. I don't want to grow my game room more than it is. I've only been in the hobby for 20 months and have played 300 unique games so far. I really want to play 1,000 games. I feel like I'm on a journey to discover what I like. I found out through a few games that I'm not a fan of games that involve reading cards as the main mechanic, like Earth or Forest Shuffle. I really do enjoy auction-style games, set collecting and achieving objectives. I guess my ask for help would be an ideal way to hone in on what mechanics I really love and curate my collection better. I've culled over 50 games since starting my journey. And that's great. If you've already got rid of 50 games, then you are starting to hone down what you like. You're not afraid to get rid of something because you might like it again later. That's kind of, you're on the right path, but at the same time, you also bought 50 games that you've now like sold on, probably, lost some money on that. So it's not ideal. And I think, to me, the tip here would be do a bit more research before buying all these games. Like, it's so exciting to go to a convention and just like load up all these games. You want to explore all of it, but it's going to take time to get through all of those. And you actually find what you like quicker if you just pick like one from each genre, or you're just a bit more selective in what you get. You say it took you a couple of games to realize you don't like reading on cards, but you might play one of these games that is like a race game, and it might just be a bad game, and you think, oh, I don't like race games. What you need to find is like, what would be considered like popular race games, play those, and that's a much better sense then that you don't like race games. At least with Earth and Forest Shuffle, those are like super high rated, but there's just a lot of games on these shelves that are definitely not on like the popular end of things. And I just feel like you could get turned off an experience, but it's actually just a bad version of that experience. At the moment, it feels like you've got a lot more small games than you've got big games. And I love small games, but I wonder if this whole size issue is meaning that you're more inclined to buy something small that you can just kind of fit onto a shelf. You've got small games on the top of one of the bookcases, whereas like the big games, you need to find space for them. If you don't have them, you're less likely to buy them. But it might be that you're not getting like the full experience of certain genres if you're just buying like a little card game, because you're just getting a lot of the same stuff. Within the card game world, there's less of a breadth of options. You've got a few games that give you some like brilliant experiences, like Bonanza is great for negotiation. Realistically, you're getting a lot of trick taking, a lot of set collection, a lot of ideas done again and again in slightly different ways. And for me, unless you're a big trick-taking fan, you only need like 1 or 2. So just to look at your collection, I could pick out some games to focus on that might sort of define whether you like a type of game. So if you played Gizmos, that's a real combo-heavy game. You're sort of doing this one thing that gets you to do something else and another thing. And to me, I just find that so overwhelming, and some people absolutely love it. So that's probably quite a good one for that. Obviously, Quacks is a good tester for kind of a push your luck thing. You can try out deck building with Quest for El Dorado. That's a really good example of a deck building game. Carcassonne for that tile laying thing. You've only got a couple of the heavier Euro games like Galileo, Galilei, and Windmill Valley, Tea Garden. I'm sort of wondering whether you're trying those out and maybe, you know, that will blossom for you, or whether it's a smaller part of your collection because you're maybe realizing that that's not what you're gravitating towards. But rather than needing to like buy more games, I think there's so much here to explore to help you understand what you like. Like, if you played Harmonies and Cascadia and you weren't into them, then that's a really good indicator that you're not into kind of like this personal puzzle type where you're doing your own thing, because those are really considered like two really wildly popular ones of those types. And a universal tip that if you're struggling for space, like Ryan says he is, then do you really need so many games of the same type? Like, he's got 3 different gift project games, so they're like 2-player abstract games. Surely 1 or 2 of them are better to you than the others. And are you really got enough time to play all 3? So I would personally thin that down to 1. At the top, you've got, they're only small, but you've got Jekyll and Hyde, Fox in the Forest, and Lone Wolves. These are all 2-player only trick-taking games. How many 2-player only trick-taking games does one person need? I would say 1. Play them and pick your favorite. But what I think you've done nicely is to find what you don't like and stuff. I think it's actually kind of harder to find what you like, because for me, I like a lot of different stuff, but it's just like there'll be one game from each genre because they're the best of their class. But there are the odd thing that just I can't stand. And a bit like you, I'm not into games where I've got to read loads of text on cards. So I think maybe picking out some stuff that is more commonly disliked. So you might find that you don't like games with a lack of player interaction. If you're very much focused on your own thing, then that might be boring to you. And maybe from your collection, I'm seeing some of that. If there's lots of downtime in a game, so with the heavier strategy games, people are taking longer on their turns, you might find that to be a real turnoff. And that will really help you guide you away from stuff rather than towards stuff. And I'd really suggest to go back and find the older games that have stood the test of time. I can see Ra and Carcassonne on the shelves, which is great, but that's because they've had like newer versions. But something like Ticket to Ride, Sheriff of Nottingham, I'm surprised not to see them because they really have stood the test of time. That they are the best in class at what they're doing. And I'd love to see in the comments other games that people feel, you know, that are going back sort of 10, 15 years that really stand out, that someone brand new to the hobby that keeps getting like flashed in images of all these new games, they actually need to ignore that and go back to these games. Like, put some reminders of them in the comments, because I think they're too easily forgotten about, and yet there's a reason why they're still in print, because they're that good. One of the questions I've been asked a lot is, how do I fit board games into my life now I have a toddler? And it's hard. For me, it's all about saving time elsewhere. And with Huel, I can have a full meal without having to cook dinner, which frees up an hour of my evening that I can fit a game into instead. 2, if I stay up late. If I haven't gone to bed yet, my daughter waking up can't interrupt my sleep. I've been using the Huel Black Edition powder. You just shake it with some water and it's ready to go in 30 seconds. You can even eat it whilst you're playing a game. I've been loving the chocolate flavor, which tastes great, and it has the right amount of proteins, fats, carbs, vitamins, and minerals that you need. And best of all, it's cheap. The powder works out to £1.79 per meal. Compared to a takeaway, you're saving £10 or more. So every time you choose Huel, you can afford another card game. If you want to save time like me by drinking Huel, you can use my code ActualLol15 and get 15% off. Click the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen to place your order. Thanks to Huel for sponsoring this video. This collection is from Mel in England, and I just love this one. It's very clear the kind of games that you're into, and just the way you've combined like the Lego people in the middle. Anytime where the games are like in and amongst other stuff, but it all just kind of fits and looks nice, is just really appealing because it just feels like it's more a part of your life. It's a shame that the games at the top are like exploding out, but Mel says that she just hates games that are too big for the cabinet, which I totally agree with. There's so many good small games in here, and I love that Mel has used one of those, what are those things that print the little labels, the Dymo labels, on the sides of the boxes, because she hates when boxes don't have the name on the side, and I could not agree more. It's like the worst sin of Oink Games is that you don't know the names of any of the games. You have to remember the color of the box. Mel clearly likes silly games, chaotic. We've got lots of party games, like a lot of player interaction and just simple fun. I love this selection of games. So it's a little bit hard to recommend stuff because it feels like she's already got most of the ones I would recommend for a collection like this. But unless I've missed it, I feel like Cockroach Poker should really fit into all of this, like just a classic, silly bluffing game. And if you're not into Cockroach Poker, then Spicy is a good alternative. And the other one that really stands out to me is Survive the Island, or Survive Escape from Atlantis. Just a brilliant family level game where you're going at each other, you're trying to eat other people's survivors with sharks and kaiju, and it's just like so good for being mean to each other, and that seems to fit here with what I'm seeing. But in terms of more just like silly party games, then Anomia is missing from those shelves, I would say, where you're trying to race to say things faster than another player. Poetry for Neanderthals could be a good one, which comes with an inflatable club that you hit each other over the head with when you get something wrong. You're trying to get people to guess words, but you can only speak in single syllables, like a Neanderthal. And then if you can get hold of it, Shifty Eyed Spies would fit perfectly in this collection, where you're winking at each other, but also trying to catch other people winking at other people. A game where you're just constantly on high alert, but sadly out of print. And I don't think I saw Trio either, and I just think for small box, punchy card games, Trio would add something to this collection. And like I feel like it fits in really nicely. And there's something really nice about the wider picture, the fact that there's party decorations up, because it feels like this is a collection of party games that you're gonna have a great time with this shelf of games. I'm not particularly feeling like the rubber bands around all the boxes, but I'm gonna assume that that's because you travel with these games all the time and you just can't bear when they fall apart and everything goes everywhere, which I totally get. It's just slightly killing the aesthetic of your shelves, but we'll give you a pass because you got such a great collection. She said her collection is quite neat though. Sometimes I think my hobby is arranging board games instead of playing them, which I totally get. If you get the IKEA Besta shelves, I love them because you can like completely customize the height of each shelf, but it just means I've spent so much time trying to perfectly find, okay, so I need all games of this height. Oh, but I don't have enough games of this height to warrant a shelf of that size, so where are they going to go? Whereas, at least with the Kallax, you just have to completely give up. You can't adjust it, so you just got to make do with what you've got. It's a fun hobby, but also a very time-consuming one. This collection comes from Stefan in the UK, and he simply asked me to roast his collection. So that's exactly what we're going to do, starting with these big boxes at the top. As a board gamer, it's acceptable to have one, maybe two of these ridiculously oversized boxes. You've got 10. There's about 2 grand of games that is above the rest of your board game collection. This is the reason your old friends don't come to visit anymore. You are way too deep into the hobby. I tell you what, sell some of them and buy yourself some better board game shelves. You've got White Kallax. White Kallax should be for kids to keep their toys on and beauty salons. And you haven't even connected them together. You've got 3 separate bookcases with gaps in the middle. You can afford a handmade wooden box to keep viticulture in, but you can't afford a handyman to just connect up your bookcases. No one in this universe should have this many boxes of Marvel United, except the designers. Maybe not even the designers. Look, your hedgehog is pleading with you to get rid of some of them. And speaking of the hedgehog, if you're going to have one soft toy to decorate your entire board game collection, you're really going to pick that one. You couldn't have found something cuter. What, did it save you from a car accident or something? There's definitely some themes in this collection. You've got Wingspan, the Isle of Cats, In the Footsteps of Darwin. You seem to be into games that are all about boring people. And let's just say it, you shouldn't have So Clover, you shouldn't have Abyss, you shouldn't have Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, and you shouldn't have Rococo. Not because it's a bad game, but I've really struggled to find a copy of it, and you clearly don't deserve it. And Colosseum, the original Days of Wonder version of Colosseum that I've never even touched a copy of, you've put it in your bottom right-hand corner of your collection. and you've got it turned up the other way to all the other boxes because that's how little you care about it. And honestly, if you send it to me, I will accept it as an apology for making me look through this terrible collection. This here is clearly Cosmic Encounter, the base game, kept in one of the expansion box, which is just one of my pet peeves because you get rid of the original box that is how it represents itself on your shelf. Now you've got this confusing expansion box just to save the tiniest bit of space when you've got a massive collection and so many terrible games that you could get rid of to save the space so that you could have that original box. And then just alongside you've got In the Footsteps of Darwin and its expansion, both of which you don't need. But the biggest takeaway is how little you watch my channel. There are 100 games on these shelves that I would never have recommended. So is it that you watch the Dice Tower but support me on Patreon? I'm totally fine to keep that happening, but when people see this collection, just don't blame it on me. I hope you like getting roasted, Stefan. I'm sure you're a nice guy, really. Thank you to my brave patrons for sharing their collections with the world. Now it's your turn to help them or mock them in the comments. And if you want your collection put under the knife, then become a patron at patreon.com/actuallol and support this important work. If you like this video, then subscribe to see more like it. I'm John Perkis. Thanks for watching.